The Galactic Council chamber was the most powerful place in the universe. It was where leaders of the greatest civilizations gathered. Massive stone pillars lined the grand hall, and the ceiling shimmered like a night sky filled with stars. Hundreds of alien species sat in their high-backed seats, their strange eyes fixed on one man standing in the center of the room, Ambassador Ethan Cole, the last representative of humanity. He stood tall, his black uniform crisp, his expression calm. Around him, alien delegates whispered to each other, their voices filled with amusement and curiosity. Then the High Chancellor of the Council, an enormous blue-skinned alien with 6 glowing eyes, spoke. "Human, you requested this meeting. Speak." Ethan took a deep breath. He had practiced this speech 100 times, but now, standing before the most powerful beings in the galaxy, he felt a strange calm. He wasn't here to ask for permission. He was here to make history. On behalf of Earth and all human colonies, Ethan said, his voice strong, "We declare our departure from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." For a moment, there was silence. Then, laughter. The chamber echoed with the sound of alien voices chuckling, clicking, and growling in amusement. A reptilian delegate with dark green scales leaned forward, his golden eyes filled with mockery. "Is this a joke?" he hissed. "No," Ethan said simply. "Humanity is leaving." Another alien, a floating creature with 6 arms and glowing tendrils, waved dismissively. "Let them go. What does it matter?" The High Chancellor let out a deep, rumbling sigh. "Ambassador Cole, this decision is unwise. The Galactic Council provides protection, resources, and guidance. Without us, humanity is weak." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Protection? You mean control. Resources? You mean exploitation. Guidance? You mean being treated like children." The laughter faded. The amusement in the room turned to irritation. A thin, insectoid alien clicked its mandibles. "You humans have always been difficult. You refuse to follow our rules, yet you demand respect." Ethan stepped forward, his boots echoing on the polished floor. "Respect is earned. And humanity has done more for this galaxy than you ever cared to admit." He gestured around the chamber. "Your technology, half of it was improved by human engineers. Your trade systems, they run on human design networks. Your wars, we fought beside you. And yet, you treat us like nothing." The High Chancellor shifted in his seat. "And what do you plan to do, human? Go into isolation. You will wither away without our support." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "We'll see." A heavy silence fell over the room. For the first time, the aliens truly looked at him, not as a nuisance, not as a weak species, but as something they didn't fully understand. Finally, a gray-skinned alien with 6 tentacle-like fingers leaned forward, his voice filled with quiet amusement. "Very well. Go. Humanity will not be missed." Ethan's expression did not change. "You will regret this." Without another word, he turned and walked away. The massive chamber doors opened, and 2 human guards stepped aside as Ethan exited. Behind him, the alien delegates muttered to one another. Some laughed again. Some shook their heads. None of them saw what was coming. As Ethan stepped into his sleek transport ship, he gave one final look at the glowing city of the Council's homeworld. It had been the center of power for centuries. That was about to change. With a quiet hum, the ship lifted off, disappearing into the vastness of space. Humanity was gone. And the universe would soon learn what that truly meant. Ethan Cole stood on the bridge of the UA's horizon, staring out into the black void of space. Below them, Earth shimmered like a blue jewel, untouched by the politics of the Galactic Council. It was a sight he hadn't seen in years. Behind him, Admiral Sarah Vaughn, a woman with sharp eyes and a quiet intensity, watched the screens as reports poured in. "The last of our embassies have been recalled. Our ships are out of Council space," she said. "It's done. We're free." The words felt heavier than Ethan expected. Free. After centuries of being part of the Council, more like being used by the Council, humanity was truly on its own. Some believed it was a mistake. Others saw it as their greatest opportunity. The news spread across Earth and its colonies like wildfire. There were celebrations in the streets, flags waving, people toasting to independence, but not everyone was celebrating. On Mars, Governor Elias Brand paced in his office, his brow furrowed. He turned to his assistant, a young officer with a nervous look. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Vaughn. I want to know what our next move is." "Sir, you think they'll retaliate?" Elias let out a bitter laugh. "They won't just let us walk away. They'll come for our resources, our trade routes. The Council doesn't like losing power." Back on the UA's horizon, Ethan and Sarah watched as a new transmission came in, encrypted, marked urgent. A voice crackled through the speakers. "This is Captain Joran Vex of the Tavar Dominion. We need to talk." The Tavar had been one of humanity's few true allies in the Council, a species that respected strength and innovation. If they were reaching out so soon, something was wrong. "Patch him through," Ethan ordered. A hologram flickered to life, revealing Captain Vex, his scaled face tense, his golden eyes locked onto Ethan's. "You don't know what you've done," Vex said. Ethan crossed his arms. "Enlighten me." "The moment you walked away, the Council started their next move. They're forming a blockade around human space. No trade, no communication. They want to starve you out." Sarah cursed under her breath. "Damn it, we should have seen this coming." Ethan didn't flinch. "Let them try." Vex shook his head. "That's not all. The Exilari are mobilizing." Silence filled the bridge. The Exilari, the Council's enforcers, a race of towering insectoid warriors bred for war. They had crushed rebellions before, wiping out entire species that refused to fall in line. If they were coming for humanity, this wasn't just politics, it was war. Sarah turned to Ethan, her voice steady but urgent. "We need to prepare. If the Council thinks we'll beg to come back, they're in for a surprise." Ethan's jaw tightened. He looked at Earth one last time, then turned to the crew. "Alert all colonies. Mobilize the fleet. If they want to test us, they're about to learn why humans should never be underestimated." The countdown had begun. The war drums of the universe had begun to beat, but humanity would not cower. Inside the underground command bunker beneath Earth's surface, Admiral Sarah Vaughn stood before a massive war table, holographic projections displaying the latest intelligence. Across from her, Ethan Cole watched with an unreadable expression as the auxiliary fleet movements were traced in red. "They're already testing our borders," Sarah said, pointing to a flashing alert over Titan, one of Saturn's moons. "A auxiliary scouting vessel entered our space 2 hours ago. We jammed their transmissions and disabled their ship, but we have no doubt they sent a message before we cut them off." Ethan exhaled slowly, his hands pressed against the table. "They're probing us, seeing if we'll panic, if we'll beg for the Council's mercy." Across the room, General Rains, head of Earth's planetary defense, let out a humorless chuckle. "They think we're weak. They've always thought we're weak." "Then they don't know us at all," Ethan said. "We need to send a message of our own." Sarah's eyes flicked to him. "What are you suggesting?" "They expect us to hesitate. To defend, but not strike. That's our advantage." He turned to the holographic display, enlarging the image of a distant outpost on the fringes of human space. "Auxiliary forces have a supply depot here. They think we don't have the guts to hit them first." General Rains grinned. "Are you saying we introduce them to human strategy?" Sarah hesitated. This could escalate into full-scale war. Ethan met her gaze. "It already has. We're just deciding whether we fight on our terms or theirs." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the decision settling over them. Then Sarah nodded. "I'll coordinate the strike." Within hours, the operation was in motion. 2 destroyers and a squadron of advanced fighters launched from the UAS Valor, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. At the head of the attack force was Captain James Holloway, a seasoned pilot who had seen firsthand how the Council treated humans as disposable. As they neared the auxiliary outpost, the silence of space was broken by a crackling transmission. "Human vessels, you are violating Council-controlled territory. Turn back or face destruction." Holloway smirked. "Funny. That's exactly what we were going to tell you." With a single command, the human fleet struck first. Torpedoes cut through the void, slamming into the auxiliary defense platforms before they could react. Fighters weaved through enemy fire, launching precise energy blasts that ripped through their hulls. Within minutes, the supply depot was nothing more than floating debris. The message was clear. Humanity would not sit and wait for annihilation. Back on Earth, Ethan and Sarah watched the battle footage. The sight of human ships overwhelming the enemy sent a clear signal through the ranks. This was not the species that the Council had dismissed. Sarah leaned in. "They won't ignore this." Ethan nodded. "Good. Now they know we aren't prey." But even as the victory celebrations began, alarms blared. A new transmission was coming in. A cold, alien voice filled the room. "You have made your choice, humans. Now you will learn the price of defiance." The war had truly begun. The auxiliary did not believe in second warnings. Their response came swiftly, like a tidal wave crashing against unprepared shores. Within hours of humanity's first strike, dozens of auxiliary warships emerged from hyperspace along the edges of human-controlled territory. These were not mere scouting vessels. They were an armada. Inside Earth's underground command center, Admiral Sarah Vaughn, Ethan Cole, and General Rains watched the screens in grim silence as red markers filled the galactic map. "They're hitting 3 colonies at once," Sarah said, voice tight. "New Avalon, Proxima Station, and Farpoint Outpost." "Classic auxiliary tactics," Rains muttered, arms crossed. "Overwhelm, conquer, erase." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then let's remind them that humanity doesn't erase easily." New Avalon was humanity's largest colony outside the Sol system, a thriving city of 10 million spread across a lush Earth-like world. It had defenses, orbital cannons, planetary shields, and a small but capable fleet. But against the sheer scale of the auxiliary attack, it wasn't enough. The colony governor, Maya Lin, stood in the central control tower as alarms blared. "I need status reports," she barked. "Enemy ships are targeting the shield generators. Fighters are engaging, but they're outnumbered 5-1. Maya clenched her fists. "Patch me through to the fleet." A hologram flickered to life, showing Captain Davian Holt, commander of the colony's defense force. His face was streaked with sweat, cockpit lights reflecting in his eyes. "We're holding, but we won't last long," he admitted. Maya took a breath. "Then we buy time." She turned to her officers. "Evacuate the civilians underground. Get every available engineer to reinforce the shields. And prepare the Exodus Protocol." Silence fell. The Exodus Protocol was a last resort, a mass planetary retreat. It meant abandoning the colony. "Governor," an officer began, but Maya cut him off. "If we don't do this, we all die. Now move." Above them, human fighters swarmed like hornets against the massive, insectoid auxiliary warships. Lasers and missiles painted the sky, explosions blooming like violent flowers. But for every auxiliary ship that fell, another took its place. Inside his cockpit, Captain Holt weaved through enemy fire, his ship barely dodging a plasma blast. "Damn it. They're pushing through." A new alert flashed on his screen. A massive auxiliary dreadnought was entering the battle. "Maya, you need to launch the evacuation now." On the surface, the first transport ships lifted off, carrying civilians toward escape corridors through hyperspace. But then, a direct hit. The planetary shields flickered, then collapsed. The Xilari descended like vultures. Back on Earth, Ethan clenched his fists as he watched the battle unfold. New Avalon is falling. Sarah didn't hesitate. Then we make them pay for it. She turned to Rains. Deploy the 7th Fleet. Full-scale engagement. We hit them so hard they regret ever coming here. Within minutes, the 7th Fleet, humanity's most elite warships, roared into hyperspace, engines blazing. Leading them was the UH Titan, a battlecruiser designed for planetary defense. As soon as they arrived in New Avalon's orbit, hell was unleashed. Missiles streaked through the darkness, finding their marks in the exposed underbellies of Xilari ships. Railguns punched through their organic hulls, sending debris scattering in all directions. The tide was turning. On the ground, Maya Lin looked up as human reinforcements rained down like vengeful gods. Drop pods slammed into enemy forces, unleashing soldiers in advanced battle armor. Mechs powered up, plasma cannons burning through Xilari ranks. Captain Holt's battered ship flew through the chaos, his targeting system locking onto the Xilari dreadnought. "Let's see how you handle this," he growled. With his last missiles, he fired straight into the dreadnought's core. The explosion ripped the massive warship apart, a blinding light swallowing it whole. The Xilari began to retreat. A cheer erupted across human forces, but Maya Lin knew the truth. This was only the beginning. Hours later, Sarah and Ethan reviewed the battle reports. "We won today," Ethan said, "but we lost half of New Avalon." Sarah exhaled, watching the flames still burning in the colony's ruins. "Then we make sure we don't lose tomorrow." She turned to the holomap, highlighting the Council's homeworld. It's time to take the fight to them. The war had changed everything. When humanity left the Galactic Council, the universe had scoffed, convinced that the primitive species would perish without their guidance. But now the stars whispered of Earth's defiance. The Xilari's attack on New Avalon had failed. The 7th Fleet had driven them back, but the cost had been high. Millions dead, entire cities lost, and a grim realization settling over humanity. This was no longer just a conflict. It was survival. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in a classified military bunker known as Fortress Aegis, the most powerful human leaders gathered. The war room was dark, illuminated only by the holographic projection of the galaxy, red enemy markers blinking across human colonies. Admiral Sarah Vaughn stood at the center, hands clasped behind her back. "We've been on the defensive long enough," she said. "That ends today." Across the table, General Rains nodded. "Agreed. We need to strike before they recover." Ethan Cole, the former diplomat turned strategist, leaned forward. "We can't just hit them anywhere. We need a target that matters." Silence fell. Then a voice spoke from the shadows. Their homeworld. All eyes turned toward the speaker, an older man in a black uniform. Director Marcus Kane, head of ONYX, humanity's secretive intelligence division. Rains narrowed his eyes. "You want us to invade the Xilari homeworld? Are you insane?" Kane smirked. "Not an invasion. A message." He tapped a button, and the hologram shifted, revealing a massive orbital station above the Xilari capital planet, the heart of Cell. It was their command hub, their fortress, their pride. "We destroy this," Kane continued, "and we show the entire galaxy that humanity isn't just fighting back. We're ending this war on our terms." Sarah exhaled. It was bold, risky, but also necessary. "What do we need?" she asked. Kane's smirk grew. "A team willing to die for the mission." 2 weeks later, in the cold void of space, a fleet of ships drifted just outside Xilari-controlled territory. They weren't like the massive warships of the 7th Fleet. No, these were stealth ships. Black, sleek, invisible to most scanners. The Ghost Fleet. On board the UHS Revenant, Captain Elias Ward watched the countdown timer on his screen. His team was silent, each one preparing for what lay ahead. Beside him, Commander Eiko Tanaka adjusted her gauntlet. "You think they're ready for us?" she asked. Elias grinned. "Does it matter?" With a final beep, the countdown hit 0. The Ghost Fleet jumped into hyperspace. The Heart of Cell was more than just a station. It was a city in the sky. Massive spires stretched into the void, shielded by layers of defenses. Thousands of Silari soldiers patrolled its corridors, unaware that death was already inside their walls. The Revenant dropped the strike team onto the station's outer hull, where they breached the airlock in silence. No alarms, no warnings, just shadows moving in the dark. Elias led the way, pulse rifle steady. "We plant the charges, get out, and watch the fireworks. Keep it quiet." They slipped through security checkpoints, taking down guards before they could even react. The Exilari thought themselves superior, so sure that no one would dare strike at their heart. They were wrong. As Eiko placed the final explosive charge, the team received the extraction signal. Time to leave. But then, the alarms blared. "Damn it," Elias cursed. The Exilari had found the first set of explosives. Their forces swarmed the corridors, insectoid warriors skittering toward the humans with plasma rifles raised. "Move! Now!" Eiko shouted, cutting down an enemy with a precise shot. They sprinted toward the extraction point, but the Exilari were closing in fast. Too fast. Elias hit his communicator. "Revenant, we need immediate evac." "Static." "Then." "Negative. Enemy warships inbound. We're out of time." Elias' stomach dropped. They were stranded. Options ran through his mind, but none of them ended well. Then he saw it. A control panel leading to the station's primary reactor. If they couldn't escape, they'd make sure the Exilari never forgot this day. Elias turned to his team. "Change of plans. We're taking this place down manually." Eiko blinked. "That's suicide." He smirked. "Then let's make it count." They'd fought their way through, every second a desperate battle. Explosions rocked the station as the charges they had placed detonated section by section. Fire and debris filled the corridors. Finally, they'd reached the reactor core. Elias hacked into the system, setting the meltdown sequence. 5 minutes until total destruction. He turned to his team. "We need to find another way out." Then the walls shook violently. The Revenant had returned. The ship roared into view, blasting apart the docking bay doors. Elias and his team sprinted toward it, bullets and plasma flying around them. One by one, they leaped aboard, just as the reactor hit critical mass. The Revenant punched into hyperspace. Behind them, the heart of Cell burned. For the first time in history, the Exilari had lost not just a battle, but their pride. Back on Earth, when news of the mission's success reached the War Council, Sarah Vaughn stood in silence. Ethan exhaled. "They'll never recover from this." Sarah met his gaze. "No, but they'll want revenge." And she was right. The Exilari wouldn't stop until humanity was ashes. But humanity had just proven one thing to the galaxy. They were not prey. They were hunters. The galaxy was silent. For the first time in Exilari history, they had been struck at their core, not by another empire, not by some rebellious faction, but by humanity. The destruction of the Heart of Cell was more than just a military loss. It was humiliation. Across the universe, whispers spread. If the mighty Exilari could be wounded, who else could challenge them? The balance of power had shifted, and Exilari were furious. The price of defiance. On the bridge of the UAS Revenant, Captain Elias Ward stood with arms crossed, watching the data streams. The Exilari response was worse than expected. Entire fleets were mobilizing. Colonies that had remained neutral were now fortifying their defenses. The Exilari weren't just preparing for retaliation. They were preparing for extermination. Elias exhaled sharply. "They're going to throw everything they have at us." Commander Eiko Tanaka, standing beside him, gave a grim nod. "We hurt them. Now they want to make sure we never get the chance again. The rest of the bridge crew listened in silence. Every officer, every soldier knew what was coming. It wasn't just a war anymore. It was survival. Back on Earth, within the underground fortress known as Aegis Prime, the United Human Federation's leaders gathered for an emergency session. Admiral Sarah Vaughn stood at the center of the war room, staring at the incoming reports. Dozens of Silari fleets, hundreds of warships. Their response was swift, brutal. Entire human colonies were being wiped out. "They're not just retaliating," said Ethan Cole, the former diplomat turned strategist. "They're trying to erase us." Sarah clenched her jaw. "Then we make them regret it." Some of the council members hesitated. Humanity had won battles, yes. But this. The Silari weren't just attacking military targets. They were bombing entire planets. Billions of innocent lives were at stake. The room fell into tense silence. Then a voice spoke. "We need the project." All eyes turned toward Director Marcus Kane, head of ONYX, humanity's most secretive intelligence division. A few council members stiffened. Others whispered among themselves. Sarah narrowed her eyes. "You can't be serious." "It's the only way," Kane said. "If we don't act now, there won't be a humanity left to protect." Deep beneath the Martian surface, hidden away from prying eyes, Project Revenant had remained a secret for decades. A weapon. A last resort. The scientists working on it had never expected it to be used. Now, they had no choice. Inside the lab, Dr. Evelyn Cross, the project's lead scientist, stood before a holographic display. The schematics of something terrifying glowed in the dim light. It wasn't a super weapon in the traditional sense. Not a bomb. Not a fleet. Something far worse. A virus. One that only affected the Xilari. Aiko stared at the display, disbelief in her eyes. "You're talking about genocide." Dr. Cross didn't flinch. "I'm talking about survival." Elias, arms crossed, shook his head. "This isn't who we are." Kane gave a dry chuckle. "You think the Xilari care? They're wiping out entire planets. Do you really believe we can fight them on equal ground?" The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone in the room. The virus wasn't just a weapon. It was a final solution. Sarah's voice was cold. "What are the chances of it spreading beyond the Xilari?" Dr. Cross hesitated. "Less than 5%. Sarah exhaled slowly. That was still too high. She turned to the council. "We have one last chance to end this war without erasing an entire species." Ethan frowned. "How?" Sarah straightened. "We show them what we can do." The Xilari High Command resided within the Obsidian Citadel, an enormous fortress on their homeworld. It was here that Supreme Chancellor Exithar plotted humanity's destruction. As he sat in the war chamber, overseeing the deployment of yet another fleet, a piercing alarm echoed through the halls. A transmission. From Earth. It was a simple message. A holographic display flickered to life, revealing Admiral Sarah Vaughn standing in the war room. Behind her, the schematics of Project Revenant were displayed. Her voice was calm. "Steady. This is your only warning." The Xilari warlord sneered. A mere human dared to threaten them. Sarah continued. "You believe you can wipe us out, that we are weak. But we have something that can end your species in an instant." She leaned forward. "We don't want to use it. But if you force us, we will." The room fell into stunned silence. For the first time in their history, the Xilari felt fear. The Galactic Council had once mocked humanity. Now, they begged for negotiations. The Xilari had never faced an enemy willing to match their ruthlessness. The war did not end overnight. But for the first time, humanity was not seen as prey. They were seen as something else entirely. A predator. The species that walked away from the Council and took the future with them. The war did not end with a single message. Even after Admiral Vaughn's threat, even after the Xilari hesitated, the galaxy remained on edge. Humanity had always been seen as the youngest species, the weakest among the stars. But now, the universe feared them. Not because of their weapons, not because of their fleets, but because of their will. Inside the Galactic Council's Grand Chamber, representatives from dozens of species gathered for an emergency meeting. Tensions ran high. The Auxiliary Chancellor, Exithar, stood at the center of the chamber, his voice filled with barely contained rage. We must act now. Humanity has proven itself a threat to all of us. Some council members agreed. Others, however, remained silent. They had seen what happened to those who challenged humanity. The once mighty Xilari had been humbled. Their fleets were battered. Their colonies were crumbling. And now they wanted revenge. Ambassador Duran of the Valkyrie, one of the few species that had remained neutral, folded his arms. You ask us to unite against them, the same humans you mocked, insulted, and dismissed as weak. Sithar's eyes burned with fury. They are dangerous. Duran tilted his head. Because they fought back. Silence. No one dared to speak. They all knew the truth. Humanity had not started this war. The Xilari had. And now, they'd wanted the rest of the galaxy to clean up their mess. But then, a voice echoed through the chamber. I believe we are forgetting something. The entire room turned as a new figure stepped forward. Ambassador Silara of the Varan Dominion. Unlike the others, Silara had spent years observing humanity, studying them, understanding them. She fixed her gaze on the council. We made a mistake when we underestimated them, a mistake we cannot afford to make again. Exithar snarled. You would have us bow to them. Silara's expression did not change. I would have us survive. Another silence. And in that silence, a decision was made. The Xilari refused to accept their defeat. If they could not defeat humanity on the battlefield, they would do so from the shadows. Sabotage, espionage, assassinations. Within weeks, human colonies began to fall, not from orbital bombardments, but from infiltrators. Key scientists disappeared. Military leaders were targeted. A silent war had begun. One humanity could not ignore. Deep within Earth's most secure military installation, Aegis Prime, Admiral Vaughn stood before a team of intelligence officers. The holographic display before them showed dozens of red markers. Every one of them represented a human target eliminated. Vaughn's jaw tightened. They think they can break us from within. Beside her, Director Marcus Kane, head of ONYX, humanity's deadliest intelligence agency, gave a small, cold smile. Then let's remind them who they're dealing with. If the Xilari thought they were the only ones capable of operating in the shadows, they were wrong. Humanity had spent years fighting wars on Earth before they ever reached the stars. They had perfected the art of stealth, sabotage, and subterfuge. And now those skills were turned against the Xilari. One by one, their spies vanished. One by one, their operatives were found dead. Every attempt to infiltrate humanity's ranks ended the same way. Silence. Until finally, a message was sent. It was not from the Galactic Council. It was not from any ambassador. It was from the humans themselves. A single sentence, broadcast across encrypted channels. You wanted a war in the shadows. Now you have one. The Xilari were running out of options. Their fleets were weakened. Their spies were hunted. And now, they were left with only one choice, one last attack. A desperate attempt to wipe humanity out before they could strike the final blow. A fleet of 5,000 warships was assembled. Every remaining Xilari battleship, every last soldier, every last weapon. It was an all-or-nothing assault. As the Xilari armada moved toward Earth, the universe held its breath. Would this be the end of humanity? Or the end of the Xilari? On the bridge of the UAS Revenant, Captain Elias Ward stared at the incoming fleet, the largest enemy force humanity had ever faced. Commander Tanaka exhaled slowly. Here we go. Across the Sol system, every human warship prepared for battle. The final clash was about to begin. And this time, humanity would not hold back.